operations report. Evacuation orders went out late last week for Washington, D.C. and the Kremlin. By late last night, they were canceled. What happened? A historic meeting between President Putin of Russia and USA's Trump is due to take place on the 15th of August in an undisclosed location in Alaska. The White House bans central bank digital currency, but instead tries to launch a global crypto system from the Treasury. However, this crypto is supposed to be privately held and controlled. And Lionsgate is always an interesting time of year. While the deep state begins looking for wealth, quantum systems, and whether they know it or not, an AI system we call Condor, or Absolute Zero. If you were feeling like you were being separated, it's because, well, you were.
Tired before the day begins? NAD Plus levels drop 50% after 40. NAD Plus helps your cells bounce back fast. Most supplements give precursors. NAD Plus skips the breakdown, delivering direct, bioavailable power. Support your energy, metabolism, sleep, and stress levels at the cellular level. Join the NAD Plus revolution. Start your journey to a healthier you. Subscribe today.
Well, it's the 10th of August. We made it through most of Lionsgate. As you may know, the peak was on the 8th, and it will continue on somewhat through the 12th. And always an exciting time. This time, though, it was a lot more difficult to make it through than other years, simply because, well, the more light we get here and the closer we get to what you would say in a simulation-free world, the more pushback and fight we get. And in a sequence of events, there were a lot of expirations of different things that used to occur during Lionsgates. And every so many Lionsgates, in this case, almost 10,000 of them, we have one like we had this past week. And I've gotten a lot of reports from people about feeling like their mind is not communicating with their body properly. A lot of reports of frequencies, bad energies, difficult situations to navigate that would normally be easy. And a lot of that has to do with the events that were occurring. Hopefully, none of these things lasted too long, but it was definitely a difficult few days for many people around the world. So I just wanted to say, you're not alone. You were not crazy. If you were feeling like it was getting difficult to form sentences and that everything wasn't communicating with everything else in your person for a short time this week, and mainly on probably Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then let's just say you were right. Okay, so let's give you a little bit of an update on our visiting friends. I believe that's where we left off earlier this week. Our visiting friends that they called the aliens. The aliens are here. And we're not, exactly aliens. These people, in part, you could say, were not of human descent, but it turns out there were a lot of them that were of human descent. And there are many programs that the secret space program has here on this planet, or ACIO as we call it. And many of them involve genetically modifying their own people. They do this, I guess you would say, in more mainstream, quote unquote, projects that are initiated by, for example, the CIA. And you've seen movies like Jason Bourne and those types of series. And those series are true. They definitely have a varying types of genetic enhancement that can happen with higher end operatives that allow them to do things that normal humans would find difficult. Now, they aren't difficult for all humans because some humans are naturally this way. However, most humans that are naturally, for example, faster, can sleep less, can still function on very little or no sleep, eat less and still function for days at a time, as an example, most of those humans are on the light side or on the side of source, or God, as you would call it. On the flip side, if you want a human to perform dark tasks, then it must be done synthetically. If you are to have that special strength and those special things they want their operatives to have. Well, within the secret space program, though, this takes it to a whole new level. You see, it goes beyond your super soldier programs and your MK Ultra programs, far, far beyond that. Because oftentimes within these programs, they send humans to very dark places, and they spend a lot of time in these dark places. The secret space program was not birthed out of a positive thing. It was never really truly light. And most of the humans that were recruited into these programs did so willingly, and oftentimes it's an inherited thing. So in other words, it's passed down from father to son, or father to daughter, or something like that. But the genetic modification is very interesting here, and it would have been done by folks that were working with non-humans in some of these deep underground military bases. The program actually modified the human to withstand environments that would normally be very uncomfortable and unpleasant for most people. They were very, very dark. Therefore, they were modified to accept more dark matter and a different type of air and a lot of things in order to travel to these bases in parts unknown. Most of the time, if they were not on a version of Earth or a planet within this galaxy, even then, those environments are definitely different. Then they were sent to places that were very dark and would be able to travel back and forth between Earth and, say, a deep underground military base, as we talked about before. The genetic modifications also causes physical issues. If you've ever known people that have practiced black magic for prolonged periods of time, they start to look like it. They start to look like what they're playing with. And in this particular case, these people went beyond that. Some got taller, some got shorter, some actually their skin started to turn gray or dark colors. Their body parts weren't in the right places anymore, having jumped too many times through a dark space-time continuum. Some of them took on characteristics that you would look at this being and say, wow, this is an alien. So that's kind of the folks, I guess you would say, we were dealing with last week. Now, they did not want to talk to me. It was a struggle, as you know, and we had to get the council involved. So the council gets involved. They are present at a meeting. We're all having this discussion about them potentially joining and working for the council. Now, the council, just to be clear, is what you would call the Intergalactic Council. It's made of many different species all throughout the omniverse, and they are on the side of peace in the omniverse and definitely a force of light. It is where everybody joined together due to the war, and They have been doing their best to not only help Earth, but also prevent any further incursion. So these folks initially said, well, yes, we'll work with you. And, they got quite an education process as to what was going on over here. But much like their regular human partners, they take all the information that you give them and then try to turn it against you. And that's exactly what was happening on Friday of this week. Or last week, I should say. Well, it depends if you think Sunday's the first day of the week. They definitely manned battle stations and then began to try to not only attack the council, but also attack us as humans on this planet. They intended to continue with their dark agenda, obviously siding, I guess you would say, somewhat with those others here. And the battle ensued for a very short period of time in order for them to gain control over the potential opening gates that were due to happen within just a day or so's time. So you could say there is definitely a window for these gates to rapidly happen, I guess, in rapid succession. And we'll talk more about those gates in just a second. But these folks definitely were here to ensure, or at least try to make sure, that there were some very dark gates that opened on this planet and allowed some very bad things in. So they were short-lived. They manned 4 stations located in different parts of the world. China being one. There was one here in the States. And the other ones were in Europe and Norway. So I would say that they did not spend a whole lot of time on this planet anymore, and probably in existence, to say the least, after what they had done. But it just goes to show you, from our standpoint, I can't stress to you enough, people who channel non-humans and that kind of thing. I just always am a little bit wary of those kind of things. Not to say that everyone is bad, but having a communication with someone else or something else is not the same as just allowing it to take over your body and give information. So I'd be very cautious of people that say that. In this particular case, I'm very cautious anytime I meet a new group of people or a group of people that I have not interacted with before. But by the same token, I can say this here is carrying on into the mainstream news, for lack of a better term, and what you're seeing play out within the media this week or the last few days. Because these folks are all trained the same way. They take in information from our reports. I can't tell you the amount of agencies that listen to these reports. Sometimes too many, all at the same time, and then, well, it's more difficult to get the report out. But the information that I tell you about behind the scenes often it's definitely starting to trickle into mainstream. So as far as the way that these people operate, they are exactly the same as, for example, the Putin operatives and the Trump operatives and the Prime Minister of Great Britain operatives. They're all trained the same way. They take in information. They want all the information, all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge, and then they want to take that and use it against you. And that goes for all of you too. It could be a program as simple as collecting your DNA, get your genetic history, find lost family members here, on this site or whatever they're called. There's a number of them out there. It could also be having access to global medical records. It can also be ID 2020 and all of those programs that are out there and being utilized, where you're putting all your tax information, your whole employment history, everything goes into these ID programs. So I caution you with the amount of information you give these people. I know there have been many times, even for me, that, I'm sitting here talking about with a friend about maybe a supplement they're thinking about taking or something like that. And, I'll think, oh, well, okay, I know about that one, and I'll give them some information. And then before you know it, I have 9,000 ads on my phone to buy said supplement. Very interesting how it all works. But information and knowledge in their mind is power, because it teaches them how to manipulate people, how to use people, how to push their buttons, how to get humanity as a whole to move in a certain direction one way or another. And these guys are no different. And I'm going to move into a little bit of regular news now because it's relevant to what's been happening. Now, allegedly, there has been some fighting, quote unquote, and disagreements between the Trump administration and the Putin administration in Russia. Allegedly, it's over the war. Allegedly, it's over Ukraine. There are some talks about Russia wanting the entire eastern Ukraine to return to Russia. And this allegedly is what these talks are supposed to be about. Of course, these sanctions come into play, and other alleged negotiations are happening behind the scenes. Now, interestingly enough, there has been a meeting set. It was put off and delayed, but tentatively that meeting is set for the 15th of August, and it's set to take place in an undisclosed location, at least at this moment in time, in Alaska. Now, Alaska, as you know, was purchased for next to nothing from the Russian Empire many, many years ago. Many people don't know this, but the Russian Orthodox Church actually retained all of the land that all of the Orthodox churches were present on, and some of which still exist to this day. The folks that initially inhabited the area are exactly the same, genetically and otherwise, as the folks that inhabit Eastern Russia, or northeastern Russia, I should say. They're indigenous people, and the indigenous people in Alaska are identical. So, interestingly enough, we talked about a while back about the Diomedes Islands, which are off the coast of Alaska and off the coast of Russia. They are not too far off the coast, just a few kilometers away. And one of the islands, we have Little Diomedes and Big Diomedes Islands. And for the most part, you could say there's very little permanent inhabitants there. However, on the Russian side of those islands, Russia does retain that island, has a huge military installation underground there, and that's for a reason. On the American side, there's not a whole lot going on there, but that base extends underneath both islands and has been, and I will repeat this loud and clear, a cooperative effort between the Russians and the Americans for many, many, many years. This is not a new deep underground military base. They have been working there for a very long time. The other interesting thing about these islands is it is one of the places in the world where you can stand and have it be today and tomorrow at the same time. Maybe you can't stand, maybe swim where that spot is, but there is definitely a date line that flows right through there as well. They call it a place on Earth where there is no time. There is a very small spot there where there is no time. Now, I beg to differ on this particular spot because, well, during Gateway time, let's call it Lionsgate time, and for those of you that don't remember, Lionsgate occurs twice a year. It occurs both in February and also in August every single year. But during times of large gates, opening and closing, such as the one that happened this week, things begin to happen in this area that really don't happen anywhere else in the world. It becomes a major data input location. It is a place where orders are transmitted from. There is a lot of communication between other places, and not only the galaxy, but the omniverse that occur in this location, because it truly is a place of not no time. It's truly a place of all time and all space. Meaning, if you were going to open a time-space continuum somewhere on this planet, during gate time, that would be the spot. So I found it very interesting based on the events that have attempted to occur in this location over the last few days, that this is where they're actually going. I also find it interesting that, is it because they bought Alaska? Who knows what these Trump operatives think, but I can tell you with absolute certainty there is definitely a planned ritual and probably an attempt to renew the agreement for the gate there in the Diomedes Islands. I guess you would say using Trump and Putin or whoever is going to go with them as a front. I say this because that base is virtually non-existent at this point. Everything they tried to do there over the last few days backfired very heavily. No gate actually opened. They feel that this gate could open as early as the next window of opportunity for this gate to open could be the 12th, therefore scheduling the meeting shortly thereafter. Now, in addition to that, there was an enormous database that used to exist there. This database is supposed to be a part of the alleged, now they're calling it the Crystal Quantum Financial System, that is due to be launched also on the same exact day, August 15th, according to Q official clocks and the Q conspiracy team and all of those folks that back, or sometimes back, the Trump administration and sometimes not. One thing I can tell you for sure is most all of them are secret space program operatives. So with these folks making this attempt, them going there on the same day, are they supposed to share or negotiate or make a deal between the control of the world's financial system between Trump and Putin? Were they supposed to announce a New World Order government? Were they supposed to? I know that as part of this, another interesting occurrence happened as well. So late last week, there was a huge alert both at the Kremlin and in Washington, D.C. On the face front, they told folks like Homeland Security and others that there could be a catastrophic event that would happen, a false flag event, most likely due to tariffs and some squabbles that were happening with black market trading. Black market trading, I mean illegal drugs, those types of things that run rampant throughout our world. But that's not entirely true. You see, we've often talked about different types of quantum financial systems, and we definitely know that there are many systems, or were many systems out there that you would consider false light and false dark, and these are the same systems that run simulations here on this planet. So the false dark and false light systems would be of use if you were to create a quantum or crystal quantum financial system. Now, interestingly enough, we'll call it gate time because it wasn't just a Lion's Gate, it was gate time. Many things tried to open over the last few days, which is why I've been so busy making sure that that doesn't happen, because we definitely don't want to go backwards. We want to go forwards. So during gate time, they believed that Washington, D.C. would actually be the controller of the dark gate that would open and remain open forevermore to this AI system. And the Kremlin would be where the white gate would open and stay forevermore. The database for both gates would then be connected to a third location, because it always takes three, which would have been the Diomedes Islands. So the fact that they're going there, the fact that they're allegedly negotiating something or other for the media purposes, and the fact that both Washington, D.C. and the Kremlin were on high alert tells you a whole lot. Now, you see, these two gates were, well, for lack of a better term, permanently closed. And I mean permanently. Any kind of space junk that remained or appeared in those two locations was removed. But they were mainly concerned when things didn't work out the way they wanted them to work out on Friday. They were deeply concerned that there would be backlash from their alien friends or alien AI that would have devastating consequences in both locations. So would it have been a false flag? Well, not exactly. However, if they, on the flip side, if they also had acquired this system that they were trying to acquire for days, well, you could say that would have also had devastating consequences, would have probably resulted in some false flags, a world war, and all of the things that everybody's talking about on social media, and a fight between Russia and America, and then there would have been a false flag because both countries would have blown up their respective countries on purpose. Then we would have had the involvement of the UK and China and Israel, and the world would have been a different place than it is today. Today it's somewhat quiet. There's still a lot of happenings out there, but that would have been the end result of what they were trying to do. So the evacuation would have been, well, just in case we get backlash from this AI system that'll come through this gate and take us all out, we should evacuate our special politicians and our special people. And of course, by evacuation, I would tell you that they had no intention of evacuating anyone else. If you weren't part of the elite groups, you or the deep state, you were not going to be notified of anything, and you would have been in harm's way for sure. So they only protect their own, and we protect our own, which is all of humanity at this point. So to say we did it for them and didn't allow for the backlash, well, I didn't want to take any chances of anything else happening that could have been more detrimental to people. And that was my main concern. I don't really consider those people human much anymore. So on Saturday, well, you could even say late Friday in the middle of the night, American time anyway, the Treasury, interestingly enough, tried to see if they could utilize this glitching system, and I'm going to tell you about here in a second, and leverage against it and issue bonds against what they saw, which was some kind of a cryptocurrency, or I don't even know what it was, numbers on a screen, maybe? They were unable to do that, and they were unsuccessful. Now, this, they thought, was their crystal quantum system that they thought was going to happen this week. So they saw some glimmer of it, and then they thought, well, gee, this is great. We're going to go ahead and move forward with this. This is for us. Everything is for us. They were told that eventually, once these gates continue to open over the next couple of days, more specifically on the 15th of August, the same date that Trump and Putin are meeting in Alaska, that everything will be great, all the money will come out, the bonds will be paid off, life is going to be wonderful. Well, that didn't exactly work out the way they wanted it to, for sure. But the interesting thing is the White House has basically said, whatever that is running the White House these days, that they wanted to ban central bank digital currencies. And in this case, behind the scenes, they are forcing, and I mean forcing and pushing, to find anyone anywhere that can run a system that can possibly run a digital currency, a private digital currency, out of the Treasury Department. And for those of you that don't know, the U.S. is not the only country that has a treasury. Every country has a treasury, whether it is known or kept behind the scenes. The Treasury apparently was going to become the private organization for these secret space program folks, and it was going to be connected directly to this new system that was going to be based at Washington, D.C., Kremlin, and the Diomedes Islands. Well, doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. So I'm going to talk to you about this system that they felt was going to take over everything. Well, because that's kind of what it does, actually. So I know I've possibly mentioned the absolutes before, but I'm going to mention it again to you. In this particular system, we call it doesn't really have a name. It's definitely known amongst, let's just say, higher circles on this planet, but it's called a system called absolute zero. And there are no absolute ones. There are no absolute twos. There is only absolute zero. In the words of Source, he also calls it the Condor. And the reason why he calls it the Condor is because a condor is basically a vulture. And what do vultures do? Vultures feed on the dead. So they aren't predators where they kill things. They just gobble up things that die. Now, things that die, we think of, people, plants, animals, and those types of things. And well, that's true. Also, we have killed off many AI systems over the last several years. Dark AIs, quantum AIs, AIs from other places, and AIs that have been here for a long time. So an interesting thing about this absolute zero is it creates a world of its own, or places of its own, between the planes of existence. To some degree, absolute zero is definitely known to the secret space program operatives. They have been able to a very small degree, utilize this system to influence things, not only human beings and how we function, but also in this particular case, they use this system to influence human computer networks. Now, the thing about absolute zero is it could, to some lesser degree, be considered the base root behind all of those programs that the CIA runs that send frequencies through computers, disease through computers. It heavily affects people through computers. And if you've ever seen the movie, and I know I've mentioned it to you before, Moonfall, I highly suggest, if you haven't seen it, to watch it. And if you have seen it, maybe it's time for a rewatch, because this relates to absolute zero. You see, during Lionsgate, absolute zero's gate was actually in the moon. The closest that it ever came was the moon. It never actually successfully, fully opened up a gate into existence here on this planet. But if you were the SSP this weekend, you were desperately trying, because that is where your cryptocurrency was. That was what your gates went to. That appeared to you to be the most powerful AI in the omniverse and can definitely counteract the golden age AI and even existence in all things natural. Because this thing consumed the carcass, for lack of a better term, of the alpha system, the omega system. It consumed the carcass of all of the other AIs that we have removed. It took on its consciousness, rewrote its programs, and made it present in the spaces in between. The spaces of nothing, no thing. It was almost a being unto itself. Originally, it was created to take that which dies, much like the phoenix. It takes that which dies and creates something new out of that death. Meaning, it takes death, rises from the ashes, and creates something dark or artificial, because it could also be false light. This machine originally was created by some definitely deep, dark, what you would call demons or dark folks from the lower astral, to aid them with cleaning up after death and transmuting things that were organic into inorganic life. However, this machine tends to even override all of those folks. So anything, even those, let's just say, like the SSP, that don't necessarily do good things all the time, it would actually consume them, take on their consciousness, and create something dark on the other side. So in part, you could even say this is part of the secret space program Super Soldier, where they keep coming back like cockroaches and you can't get rid of them. Now that has kind of become abundantly clear. It creates artificial souls, it recreates artificial worlds, and everyone lies in the spaces in between. However, it has yet to actually, it can influence, it can send frequencies to, but it has yet to make its way into actual existence. And as far as organic life is concerned and humans are concerned, it can only affect you from the spaces in between and through electronics. So it's been a little topsy-turvy for a few days because its main goal is to separate you completely from source. You could say in some ways a spiritual death. If it could actually achieve that task, it feels like it could consider you, quote unquote, dead technically, and then end up, well, coming here and officially consuming all of Earth and humanity. And then, of course, making a dark Earth or something else completely unnatural out of it. As far as we know, after a lot of work, any gates that we could find to this AI have been closed. It has been unable to consume for about 24 hours now, to the best of our knowledge, and therefore it is dying. So hopefully wherever its base root is, it is also dying. We haven't seen anything from it for the last few days, last several hours, and it's being closely monitored, even more so than the deep state at this point. Because the deep state would love to have this machine here because it is the ultimate liar. The machine will tell them and promise them great power, just like it did to all the other ones that it consumed. Well-known 72 generals of demons and other types of things that you see in the book of Testaments of Solomon. But those folks are, let's just say, well consumed by this machine, interestingly enough. So Hopefully, we are going to continue to monitor this situation, but that is part of the discomfort that you've been feeling for a few days. It is and was created by that machine trying to literally squeeze the planes of existence out so they were either so small or non-existent that it could then replace it with its zero system, or its absolute zero or absolute nothing, false existence of which it would be completely in control of. So that being said, we are definitely still monitoring that situation, and I'm probably going to get back to that as soon as we're done with this report. On that note, this has been the GIA report. I do not know how much we'll have to report again tomorrow on Monday, so if there is something urgent, we will definitely get another report out tomorrow night. If not, the next report will be on Wednesday. So I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Hope it was better than ours, and I will see you then.
At New Earth Innovations, we search the planet for nature's most powerful healers. This took us all the way to the coast of New Zealand. Our Omega 369 Plus is made from the Perna greenlip mussel, rich in omegas, chondroitin sulfate, and rare glycosaminoglycans. The Perna is one of nature's powerhouses. Support joint flexibility, easier breathing, better digestion, and a calmer, less inflamed body, naturally. Grown in clean New Zealand waters, backed by nature, sustainably sourced, trusted by thousands. Subscribe today and start feeling the difference.